welcome back to Insomniac's Dream. Today's video is how I created my Nebula body paint. Really works well with the white ass hands, doesn't it? The illusion is complete. This was another pretty long paint. I think it was nearly 11 hours on stream. I mean, stream always adds a little bit of extra time, but still a lot of detail I wanted to put into this look, so I hope I did Nebula justice. She has been a paint that I've been very intimidated to attempt for a while, and I'm happy I finally did it. So there's a lot to cover, so let's jump straight into it and let's just keep watching to see how it came to life. So like with a lot of my paints recently, the first step was to block down my brows. I did the exact same step as my last two tutorials with the glue stick method. I think I'm going to make a proper tutorial for you guys soon, so it's not just a quick speed through moment. But using the water-soluble glue stick, using a spatula to flatten them down, and then blending out the edges with some water. And then while waiting for those layers to dry, I went ahead and prepped my hair for the bald cap. So I like to slick back my hair entirely with Got2b glued spiking glue. This is just because I have a ton of baby hairs along my hairline, and this will ensure that they do not get caught in the latex. Then once the brows were dried, I quickly went over with a correcting color, some concealer, and just powdered them down. And then I got ready for the bald cap. The one I was using is from Mehron. It comes very oversized, but it's kind of nice because it ensures that you can cut it to the exact size that you need. So I sketched out where I need it for my hairline, around the ears, and then I just cut the latex. And then once I found a good position for it and where I wanted to tack everything down, I used Mehron Spirit Gum by making a line along the outside of my hairline as well as on the bald cap itself, and then pulled all the edges down and pressed them to the glue. You want to try and ensure that the edges of the bald cap are as flat to your skin as possible. If you have a little ridge on the very edge, then it's just going to be harder to fully blend down with latex. So take the time you need, trim if you need to. And then once you have all the edges down, you want to go over with a few coats of liquid latex. I think I did about 5 coats, but just keep going until you can feel that that edge is pretty much hidden. And if there's any areas where you need a few more layers, just go ahead and do that. Also, try to remember to work in thin layers. Latex dries pretty quickly, but the thinner it is, the faster it dries. If you do big, thick layers, it will take a lot longer. And then once it fully is dry, be sure to powder it entirely so that the latex has no tackiness left to it. Moving into the paint, I wanted to start with mapping out the really important eyepiece that sits over her left eye. And for this, I just sketched out with a white water-activated face paint, and then once I had the shape down, I went over it with Mehron Silver and just filled the entire area in, knowing where I would want to be making all the little sections later on. I originally was also going to use the metallic powders from Mehron, which are super shiny, but honestly, the water-activated silver was more than enough. It has a really nice shine to it. And then with the silver piece down, I wanted to make sure I also mapped out her skin tone. So for that, I took a blue water-activated face paint, figured out the sectioning, and then filled in the sides with the blue as well as the center with purple. I also made sure to quickly sketch in the head plate that she has as well. It is actually darker. It's more of like a black gunmetal gray, but I decided to put the silver first and then I can shade it later. And in case you're wondering here, I do leave the eye areas free until the end because I know I have to put in my Sclera lenses and I'm just going to make a huge mess of my makeup when it gets to that step. So might as well leave them for now. Moving back to the eyepiece, I just took a really fine detail brush and a black water-activated face paint, and this is where I started doing all the outlining of the little metal pieces that I could find and see on the reference pictures that I had. For this entire look, I kept pulling up numerous different reference pictures, hoping to get as many of the details accurate as possible, but I'm sure there's going to be little things that I've missed here and there. You can see for really long pulls, I like to rest either my pinky or one of my other fingers on my cheek or side of my head. This just helps stabilize my hand, so if you're ever finding you're having a lot of shaking happen, it's a good trick to try and get your brush to be a little bit more stable while pulling along for line work. And yes, I do wish I could have gone back even further than I do with the design, but there was a certain point where I just couldn't see the side of my head properly. It starts to get kind of trippy with your one eye being unable to see the side of your head. So if you're painting this on yourself, just go as far back as you can go, or get a friend to help you with the back section. And then once I had all of the line work down that I needed, I went ahead and started using a black eyeshadow to add shading to all the different areas that overlap and are darker. That first bit I did there is supposed to be kind of bent for the metal, so I shaded it that way. And then for all the metal pieces, I always want to make sure to leave a shiny edge as well as only shade in certain sections. Metal tends to pick up light more in blocks of color as opposed to a more organic shape. So you want to just kind of add little sections of shading because you'll do the same with highlighting later on. And when I was happy with the shading, I moved on to doing the line work that is across her face. Again, using the same fine detail brush and water-activated face paint, as well as outlining the metal plate on the top of the head since I had yet to do that. And then for her shirt, I used 2 different colors of purple to map out the shapes of it. First going in with the lighter one that I knew would be more of the strap colors, and then following with the darker purple and using that to block out all of the sections of her shirt. And of course, this is just one of the shirts she wears in one of her reference photos, so you can pick whichever outfit you're digging the most. I also made sure to add black for the area where her kind of metal type collar sits. And then I also wanted to add a bit more texture to her skin. Her actual skin tone in the movies is a beautiful silicone prosthetic that's been perfectly airbrushed. And since I can't actually do that, I decided to take a ripped up sponge and use a lighter blue and a darker blue to add just a little bit more kind of mottled skin texture around all of those sections. I also used the black face paint again to darken the head plate since I said it was more of a dark gunmetal color as opposed to a bright silver. So I just did a few different layers of that, darkening along the edges so it would have a bit more dimension. And then with that same black, I wanted to finish up the rest of the lines that exist across her head. I was looking at numerous different reference photos for these. I think I got them in relatively the right spots, but they were kind of tricky to figure out exactly what their shapes were, especially along the sides and nearing the back of her head. So this is what I ended up with and what I committed to, but hopefully they're relatively accurate. And then some of those sections along the sides are actually a darker blue, so I just took a blue eyeshadow and started applying this along the edges so there'd be a bit more contrast, as well as using this blue into the purple area to again add a little bit more texture to the skin since it's not just a flat purple, and the blue tone matches a lot of the different colors used with her character. Then for the neck piece, I wanted to start adding that shine that kind of exists because it is a harder material that sits upright. So I was just taking a white face paint and blending it into the black with 2 different brushes, one a little bit fluffier than the other, and just kept building this up until I got to a point where I was comfortable with the contours I had added. For the shirt, I started adding shading with a black face paint going along the edges and just pushing them inwards, as well as using the black to add the cap sleeve that exists on the one side of her left shoulder. And then to soften that black shadow I had put in, I went back with the same darker purple and a little bit less water on my brush and just kind of blended the 2 colors together. I then also laid down the colors for her 2 different arms, one being the metal arm with the silver and the other being the same blue as the face. And then to add a bunch of highlighting to the edges of the strap design on her shirt, I just took a white face paint and put it along all of the edges, and used a dry, fluffier brush to blend it into the purple so that the edge wouldn't be quite as harsh. And then I did the exact same idea for the little double cap sleeve that she has. Laying down the white, blending it upwards, and hoping that that would build enough contrast for it to look like it was a separate piece. For here, I will totally admit I did not want to do her entire metal arm, so I just looked at a few different reference pictures and drew some lines where I thought they would make sense on both of her arms and hope that they're relatively accurate. But these ones are probably a bit more inaccurate because I was admittedly a little lazy with them. I made sure to use the same blue shadow on different sections of the arm in the same way I did on the face. And then just to put a little bit of texture into the shirt, I did use a white eyeshadow to highlight along the collarbone, and then an even darker water-activated face paint and a stipple sponge, and just kind of made this go down in sections to reference to the meshing that she has without having to individually sketch out little lines of mesh. And then here I just jumped back to the metal eyepiece, and with a water-activated face paint, I went ahead and added brighter highlights to all of the areas that kind of needed it. Again, like I said earlier, working in kind of blocking sections when it comes to metal, and making sure to really go along the edges where it would be catching the most light. I did the same kind of highlighting along the top plate, and then went and struggled for like 10 minutes with Sclera lenses. Finally got them in, of course, ruined part of my makeup as I much expected to do, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of damage control there. But once they were in, I could finally go ahead and fill in the rest of the skin tone around my eyes, so filling in with the blue and purple. And then I made sure to connect the rest of the lines, and while she doesn't exactly have a super smoky eye in the films, I just really liked the idea of her eyes being a really deeper, darker area, so I went ahead and laid down a black cream liner as well as going over with a black pencil to blend it out, and went over both of my waterlines just so her eyes would be a lot more intense. Last steps for me were to add a little bit more definition to the lips with a purple liquid lipstick, fill in the one brow that she has, so I just tried to sketch out to the same shape of hers, and then connect the last line to the eye, and that was it. I was done for Nebula. Alright, and that is it for my Nebula body paints. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one as much as I enjoyed creating it. It was such a fun challenge to rise to. I really hope, again, hope I did her justice. But the internet can be the decider of that, so you let me know. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with it, but we'll see what you guys feel. You know I always love to hear your feedback, so thank you very much for anyone who has stayed to the end to watch, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz. Really, really appreciate it. I, of course, will see you next video, so until then, bye guys.